Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Now, the first time I watched this movie, I lumped it in the same category as Order of the Phoenix. If you guys saw my previous review, I didn't really like Order of the Phoenix. And when I saw this movie the first time, I watched it in theaters. Actually, it wasn't in theaters. I watched it when it came out, but I won't explain how. It was a long time ago. I'm not about that life anymore. Guys, this movie follows Harry Potter, and he's on his way to class, and he discovers that he has a book that was previously in the possession of someone called the Half-Blood Prince. Meanwhile, Harry Potter has to kind of infiltrate and get in the mind of his potions teacher, who seems to have some secrets he doesn't want to divulge. Yeah, so like I said, I didn't like this movie the first time I watched it, and I rewatched it, and I think I was just in a shitty mood that day, because I thought this movie was pretty good in my opinion. Now, I think this movie is better than Chamber of Secrets, and better than Order of the Phoenix, but not as good as the other Harry Potter movies. This one, to me, continues a trend that I like with these movies. That trend being that we see Harry Potter and Ron and Hermione get more mature as teenagers as the story goes on. This movie has your teenagers experimenting with love and experimenting with drugs, and I thought that was a little clever twist in this movie as well. The characters in this movie are often experimenting with drugs. Well, they call it potions, but to me they're experimenting with drugs. Ron takes a love potion at a certain point. Harry Potter takes a luck potion, and it kind of makes him this drunk guy, which that allowed for a lot of laughs in this movie. Harry has grown as a character, he's grown as a man, he's getting close to manhood in this movie. He's becoming a bit of a player. Girls see him in the newspaper and they fawn over him. At the beginning of the movie, there's this cute black chick that's hitting on Harry Potter. Ayo, my man! Let's fucking go! I was rooting for Harry. I wanted him to get some poontang. So unlike the other movies where they always introduce a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, in this movie, Severus Snape becomes the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. And it was always this running joke in the movies that he always wanted to be the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, and they always got some fucking asshole instead of him. So in this movie, he finally becomes the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Meanwhile, they have a new potions teacher, which I forget what the character's name is, but he was pretty fun in the movie. When we're first introduced to him, Dumbledore and Harry Potter enter his apartment, and they're looking for him. His place is a mess. Kind of reminded me of Indiana Jones 3, when they go to get Henry Jones and his apartment is all fucked up. They do a similar thing in here, but turns out that the teacher was actually hiding in the couch, and he pops out of the couch. It reminded me a lot of another movie. There's this movie called Spy Hard, which is one of those Leslie Nielsen spoof movies. And there's a guy in that movie, a recurring character, that he's a master at hiding. And there's a scene where Leslie Nielsen is farting on a couch, and it turns out that the couch was actually the guy who's hiding. What I liked about this movie is something I usually hate in teen romances, but I feel like the Harry Potter movies always do teen romance well. The teen romance in here really works, because Ron is dating this girl that he doesn't really like, and I remember when I was that age and I used to hang around chicks that I thought were very unappealing and uninteresting, but pussy comes and goes and you gotta grab it while you can, you know what I'm saying? Oh, I didn't just say that. No, like when you're at that age, you're so desperate to have a girlfriend. If that means dating someone that you don't really like, you just do it anyway. I thought that was very interesting. Meanwhile, Hermione is a little jealous. She had the hots for Ron, which that to me is a little confusing because based on the previous films, Hermione seems actually pretty repulsed by Ron. I wish in the previous films they did it that she's like kind of grossed out by Ron, but it's kind of like when you're in kindergarten, you're like, ew, girls are gross, but meanwhile you have a little crush on a girl. I wish they played it more like that, but this kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Harry has the hots for Jenny, and he feels awkward expressing that love because it's the sister of his best friend, and he doesn't want to ruin his friendship. I thought all that was interesting, and like I say, with every one of these reviews, the first Harry Potter movie is about when you first go to high school, then 3 and 4 is about that awkward puberty stage. Here, it's a lot about the experimenting with love and drugs. These characters are starting to become a little more comfortable with the idea of getting a little romantic, and they do some substances. Maybe that's just me that got the idea of that in this movie, but I feel like that's like the next step in these characters' maturity. So like I complained about in Order of the Phoenix, I feel like the characters didn't grow. I feel like this movie makes up for that. Other than that, new characters that are around here, I didn't talk about her in the previous Harry Potter movie. I should in this one. I feel like Helena Bonham Carter does a great Bellatrix Lestrange. She's such a hateable person. Whenever she sees Harry Potter, she's like, I killed... what is his name? I killed Sirius Black! And she's like taunting Harry Potter. She's such an evil witch, both literally and figuratively. I really hated her in this movie. And I'm not gonna lie, I got a bit of a crush on Helena Bonham Carter. What that says about me, I have no clue. I just think she's an attractive person in this weird hot topic-y way. Another one of the Death Eaters in this movie, I don't know what his name is in the movie, but he really looks like the hockey player Alex Ovechkin, which I'm a little mean for doing this comparison, but as soon as I saw him, I was like, oh my god, that looks like Alex Ovechkin. I love Alex Ovechkin, don't get me wrong. He's one of the best players in the NHL and one of the funniest trolls in the NHL. This is a totally off-topic thing, but I just need to express my love for Alex Ovechkin. There is an All-Star game, and the way the NHL All-Star game works is that they'll do a draft, and it's kind of like pickup hockey where you like kind of separate the sticks and you draft players and stuff like that. That's what they do in the NHL All-Star game, and the person who gets chosen last wins a car or something like that. Yeah, they win a car. And Alex Ovechkin really wanted a free car, and whenever the reporters would go to Ovechkin, they're like, hey, Ovechkin, what are your thoughts on the All-Star game? He'd be like,
I want to be last, I need a car, so...
When they were like picking the players one by one, the two captains, they did it on purpose just to piss off Ovechkin. They picked him before last. That was a major troll move, but that was really funny. I don't know why I'm talking about NHL. I'm probably losing you guys. I thought the humor was really on point in this movie. I thought, like, the situational humor was very funny. There's that scene where Hermione and Harry are hiding behind a curtain. They get finger food, and it turns out the finger food gives you bad breath, and Hermione is just chugging them. That's the kind of humor I like in a blockbuster movie. It's more of a situational kind of humor. And I feel like so often, ever since the success of Marvel, there's some Marvel movies that do it well. I think the Guardians of the Galaxy movies do it well, but sometimes they'll just throw in a comedy scene just because the scene is boring. They'll throw in humor. And while watching this movie, as well as the previous Harry Potter movies, they're all really funny movies, and it's more of a situational kind of humor. You know these characters, and it's how these characters react in certain situations that are funny. It's not necessarily what they are saying that is funny. Like, we like characters like Iron Man because he's quippy and he's really funny, but I feel like that worked in Iron Man, and they're trying to like put that in every movie. An example of one that never worked for me was in Captain America Civil War. Again, I'm going off tangents, I'm really sorry, but in Captain America Civil War, there's like the part where Ant-Man becomes giant, and after that he shrinks, and he just removes his mask, and he's like, does anyone have any orange slices? And I'm like, I don't know, I feel like the humor in the Marvel movies just shooting everything at you, versus in Harry Potter, it's very situational. It's because it's the characters that we understand, we know, and they're acting like the characters that we've come to learn. Going into the negatives now, I feel like sometimes the humor clashes with the look of this movie. There's some scenes that are very funny, but they're edited like a serious movie, and the color grading is very dark and dim when sometimes it shouldn't be dark and dim. This is overall a darker Harry Potter movie. Even when compared to Order of the Phoenix, this is a much darker movie. And yeah, I feel like sometimes the editing, the style of the movie doesn't really fit with the humor when there is those humorous parts. I feel like a movie like Goblet of Fire did it perfectly. There are some funny scenes in Goblet of Fire when they're at the ballroom dance. That whole scene was funny, and it didn't feel gloomy. It felt bright, but then when Cedric Diggory dies, then the tone gets gloomy and the colors get gloomy and the editing becomes slower and more dramatic. I feel like this movie struggles with that balance a bit more. What I like about this movie, I always separate the Harry Potter movies in halves, years 1 through 4. The fourth one being the transition into the second half. 5, 6, 7 part 1 and 7 part 2 are like kind of its own beast in my opinion. And when it comes to that second half, the Half-Blood Prince is basically the Empire Strikes Back of the second half of the Harry Potter movies. When you watch The Empire Strikes Back, it's a very, very dark movie. Your characters are set a step back. Luke Skywalker gets his hand cut off. Han Solo gets frozen in carbonite. It ends with them like, fuck, we gotta do something now. And that's how the movie ends. Even with a movie like Avengers Infinity War, I feel like that's a movie that did it well also. Half of your characters die. Thanos has all the Infinity Gems. Thanos runs away with all the Infinity Gems, and your characters are just like, okay, where do we go from here? And Half-Blood Prince is the same thing, but for the Harry Potter universe. This movie ends, and we find out that Severus Snape is actually the bad guy, so we think Dumbledore is dead, and he was the one symbol of hope, holding everyone together. There's this line early on in the movie that alludes to it, where either Lupin or Harry Potter, or Ron Weasley's dad says, we have to have faith in Dumbledore because he's the only person we know to be truthful. And then the movie ends with Dumbledore dying, and you're like, where do our characters go from here? And it ends with them realizing that the Horcrux, the thing that basically Dumbledore sacrificed himself for, is a complete hoax. It's not even the real MacGuffin of this film. So your characters are really left like, what the fuck do I do from here? And that's something I really liked about this movie. And speaking of Dumbledore, I've been critical of the new Dumbledore that changed ever since episode 3. I thought his performance was more cold and not as warm as the first Dumbledore. Here he gets a lot better. I don't know if, like, he toned it down a bit. He did tone it down a bit. I remember he was very yelly in episode 3 and 4, but now he's, like, more laid back, and he really develops a bond with Harry Potter in this film, which makes his death a lot more dramatic. And especially that scene where him and Harry Potter go into that cave, and there's, like, zombies and creatures like that, and Dumbledore is forced to drink a potion that turns him weak and angry and makes him not himself, and it's really interesting to see Dumbledore at his most vulnerable. You look at a movie like, going back to Star Wars, the original trilogy, the mentor character, Obi-Wan, we never really saw him in a vulnerable position. Same thing with a mentor character like Gandalf. Like Gandalf, we never saw him as vulnerable as we see Dumbledore in this movie. So it really made it interesting, and it made his character a lot more developed to me. This character was built up as a guy who's like the symbol of hope, but you see him like very terrified and not himself and almost in an Alzheimer-like state. Those are the moments where you build your character up, and when Dumbledore dies in this movie, you feel it more because you saw him at such a vulnerable position, and you saw that he was so passionate about this journey that he was willing to put himself in harm's way. So it makes his death feel a lot more tragic. Unlike Sirius Black, when he died, I didn't really feel anything. But when Dumbledore died in this movie, even when I did have my criticisms of the new Dumbledore in my previous reviews, I feel like this one really did it for me. I thought he redeemed himself in this movie. The editing in this movie, much like the previous Harry Potter movies, I feel like gets a little too fast and doesn't leave a lot of room to breathe. An example is that scene where Dumbledore is faced with all those challenges. I feel like the editing there was very fast. There's this clip, I don't know if I can find it again, but Harry Potter goes to reach into the river to get Dumbledore some water, and there's a zombie hand that pops out and goes to grab Harry Potter. Harry Potter is taken aback, and there's like 15 cuts of him just walking away from the zombie hand. Not only that, but scenes where it should be beautiful and very awe-inspiring, I feel like are cut short, probably due to time constraints. That scene where Dumbledore is wielding fire around him and killing all the zombies. I wish that scene was dragged out slower, because that's the scene where we see Dumbledore at his most grandiose, and I wish that the music had time to swell up, and he had time to like grab Harry's hand and stuff like that, more of an emotional beat. But it's kind of done a little too quick, in my opinion. But other than those criticisms that I have, I feel like this is a very quality Harry Potter movie, which I didn't expect. I went into this movie thinking that I wouldn't like this one, much like I didn't like Order of the Phoenix. I feel like this movie does it pretty well. I have a few gripes with it. It's not a perfect movie, but I feel like this is a solidly told Harry Potter movie. Like I said, I like the teen romance in here. I like the fact that these teens are experimenting with drugs and love. And then when the movie takes a dramatic turn, it really works. And I like the fact that this is basically J.K. Rowling's Empire Strikes Back. So, yeah, Half-Blood Prince. The more I talk about it, actually, the more I like it. I feel like this is a well-done Harry Potter movie.